Hi guys. So this whole video thing is kind of making me a little bit crazy today. Yesterday I made this video maybe 2 or 3 times and it just didn't save to Google Classroom. So I'm going to try it one more time. We're working on commas today. So I want you to get your workbook, page 241. I'm going to set up an IXL assignment for you today, but I just want to go over it with you on the workbook. So you don't need to do this whole page. I would just like you to follow along so you know what we're talking about. So again, it's on page 241. So we've worked with commas quite a bit. In different ways. And we kind of know that when we are reading and we see a comma, we know we should do just a slight pause to get that expression. And we know that when people are reading our writing, we want them to be able to do the same thing. So we put a comma there. But today we're going to talk about some specific rules that we have for using commas. So the first one is at the top of your page, and it's when we have a series of things. And a series basically just means a list. So if you have a series of 3 things or more, we want to use a comma to put those into different segments. So we can have a series of nouns, a series of verbs, or a series of adjectives. So a series of nouns, here are 3 proper nouns. We have Jody and Brooke and Amber, and they are all cousins. So the sentence reads like this: Jody, comma, Brooke, comma, and Amber are all cousins. This is a series of 3 nouns that we split up with these 2 commas, okay? Then we can have a series of verbs, and we can see that Justin is doing these 3 different actions. It's a series of 3 actions, 3 verbs. So Justin, sorry, I can't read backwards. Justin walked, jogged, and ran during the race. So these segments, or these series of 3 things, we separate with a comma. So we have walked and then a comma, jogged and then a comma, and then we don't have a comma after ran, just in between walked, jogged, and ran during the race. And then thirdly, we can have a series of adjectives. These are 3 words, 3 describing words that describe the noun Kara's skirt. Okay, so Kara's skirt has red, white, and blue designs on it. So when we have that series of 3, we're going to put a comma after the first word and after the second word so that we kind of pause between those things so that we know that there's a series of things that belong to that noun. Okay, so that is using a comma during a series or in a series to separate those words in a series. Our second rule, you guys are very familiar with, is using a comma in the date. So January 25th, we put a comma and then the year. We could also put a comma, so let's say it was Tuesday. So we would write the word Tuesday and then we would put a comma. Then we would have Tuesday, January 25th, 2005. So those are the rules for using a comma in a date. Next, we have when we have some time order words like finally or secondly, lastly, first, we want to set that apart from the rest of the sentence, so we use a comma. We could also use this if there are other words that want to be set apart. So let's say I asked you a question and you answered yes, and then you gave your explanation, you would put a comma. So you could say like, yes, I like dogs. So you would set the word yes off with a comma, and then you would finish the rest of your sentence. Yes, I like dogs. Another way that we have practiced many times is in quotation marks. So when we have words that are coming out of someone's mouth, we separate those into quotation marks. And remember, we always end it with a comma. The words that are coming out of the person's mouth, we end it in a comma unless it's an exclamation point or a question mark. But no period. We put the period here at the end of the sentence after we finish it off. So this kind of sets apart those words, and then we know that it was the boy that was replying. So the comma sets that apart. We also, when we're addressing with someone, when we're talking to someone, we want to offset that with a comma too. So if we were separating the name from the rest of the sentence, we would put a comma there. So Mary, are you ready to go? We put a comma after Mary. Okay, then the last way we're going to look at is what we've studied before when we studied letters. Remember, we put commas between city and state or city and country. We put a comma in the date. We put a comma in the heading. We put a comma in the closing. So we've worked with all of that before. So it says, Dear Roger, and then we put a comma. Down at the closing, your friend, Seth. So we use commas in those situations. So let's take a look at those first examples in the guided practice. And this is all we're going to do in the workbook today. You don't need to finish it. You don't need to send a picture. You don't need to do anything with this except just look at it for our practice. Okay? So for number 1, it says, we saw crocodiles, alligators, and snakes at the reptile farm. So you can see that's a series of 3. Is that a series of 3 nouns, 3 verbs, or 3 adjectives? I hope you said 3 nouns. We saw crocodiles, that's a noun. Alligators, that's a noun. Snakes, that's a noun. And we want to separate those with commas. So we say, we saw crocodiles, comma, alligators, comma, and snakes at the reptile farm. Okay, so for number 2, Dear Mrs. Armstrong. Sounds like the beginning of a letter, doesn't it? So when we have the greeting of a letter, we put the comma after the person's name. Not after dear, but after the person's name. Dear Mrs. Armstrong. Then we put a comma. Okay, number 3. I need a new pencil, Carlos said. So we would put the comma after the words that come out of his mouth. So inside the quotation, these are the words that are coming out of his mouth. We put the comma, then we finish the sentence with a period. I need a new pencil, Carlos said. Okay, number 4, we have a time order word. Okay, so we can read it like this. Listen to the pause. Next, the alarm sounded. Did you hear that little pause? Next is kind of set apart from the rest of the sentence, but it's still part of the same sentence. So we just put a comma after next. Next, the alarm sounded. For number 5, the campers ate, swam, and played games. Do you hear a series there? A series of 3 or more? Okay, so what are the campers doing? Or what did the campers do? They ate, they swam, and played games. So we want to set those words in the series apart with commas. So we say the campers ate, comma, swam, comma, and played games. Okay, and then our last one there is a date. So think about where you would put the comma. August 16th, 2007. We would put the comma in between the day and the year. So August 19, comma, 2007. Okay, so I'm going to have you do some IXL practice that I can check your progress. There's also a Google document that has some of those examples, and I want you to write a sentence for me using the comma in the proper place. So I gave you some examples, and then I want you to write a sentence. So that's the Google Doc, and I'm going to put the IXL shortcuts so that you can just plug those into the search box and do some more practice on commas. Okay, have fun. Bye.